Hey everyone, you may have noticed that we've listed many new coins on Phemex recently. And since there's too many to talk about in one video, I've divided them into two categories. One category being GameFi, and the other category being Web3. Obviously these are a bit interchangeable and they all kind of have to do with this metaverse concept. But nonetheless, they still all fit into these two categories quite well, so in this video I'll start with the GameFi category. The newly listed coins we have in that category are Sand, Alice, YGG, AGLD, and SLP. Just to get a quick overview so that you guys know what these new coins are, I'm going to go ahead and talk about them all in one video, just saying some very basics. Also, some of you may be interested in the fact that these coins will be the topic of a certain little activity that some may have been missing, a certain activity called Phemex Trivia on the block. So if you're gonna play the trivia, be sure to listen closely and get that cutting edge on your opponents. All right, let's get started with Sand. The Sandbox is one of the most developed and well-established games in the GameFi space, really exploring the different ways in which they can create a metaverse and incorporate NFTs and their own coin, and create sort of a world where all the players have ownership of their assets and are able to make money in game. So one of the ways they do this is the whole thing is created with this block builder system that they have, and then players who want to create things, create in-game assets, can download this block builder and create sort of whatever assets they'd like to, whether it be clothing or items, or if they own land, they can even develop on the land, not only making structures and so forth, but also creating different immersive games within their land in the game. Sandbox recently concluded an alpha test in which many players got to experience the game in alpha and really get immersed in how the game's going to feel once it's fully released. In the alpha testing, they gave tons of prizes to everybody. People playing it had chances to win sand, win NFTs, as well as play different in-game experiences. This includes experiences created by the Sandbox developers themselves, as well as other people that have bought land in the Sandbox game and developed on there, including Snoop Dogg. So during this alpha season pass, Snoop Dogg held a metaverse concert within Sandbox, which everybody lauded as a new step into the metaverse. Speaking of Snoop Dogg, Sandbox has partnered with many well-known names, not only Snoop Dogg, but also The Walking Dead, Adidas, Avenged Sevenfold, Hell's Kitchen, surprisingly, the Smurfs, Roller Coaster Tycoon World, Atari, Deadmau, and so on, many more. The Sandbox actually has a rather long history, as it started as a mobile game way back in 2012, and then ported to PC in 2015, and then in 2018, it was acquired by another company, and that's when they started getting into the GameFi space. And as I said, now it's one of the most well-developed sort of GameFi metaverse worlds out there. Especially after Facebook changing its name to Meta, the price of Sand shot way up, and a lot of people saw it as one of the projects with the most potential to really take on this new space. So they've been developing quickly, and as you can see, their world is more immersive and playable than a lot of these GameFi games, and they continue to try to make it more and more so. So it'll be interesting to see what the Sandbox does in the future, especially after the recent huge surge in backing. Now they have plenty of funding, and all of these partnerships seem to have a good development team, so let's see where they go from here. Now, let's move on to Alice. Alice is the token used in the game My Neighbor Alice, which is self-described as a multiplayer building game which introduces blockchain to millions of players, where anybody can buy and own virtual lands, collect and build exciting items, and meet new friends. So in some ways, this does sound a lot like the Sandbox. Though, as you can see from the visuals, My Neighbor Alice definitely has its own unique style, doesn't really look at all like the Sandbox, and presents a sort of more relaxed, nature-y focus where the main thing you're doing is farm building and perhaps interacting with some farming community. Now, this may look a bit like games that you know of, and they don't try to hide their inspirations at all. As you can see on their white paper, they do list Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley as inspirations, which lets us know even more that they're going for that sort of casual, relaxed game vibe. Now, they also mentioned that Minecraft and Roblox are on their inspirations, so we can imagine that they're focusing a bit more on the ability for players to create their own very unique in-game assets or land, farmland, etc. Now, an interesting thing about making the game this way is that we all know that crypto and blockchain space is pretty heavily male-dominated. However, these games like Animal Crossing and Stardew Valley statistically have more female players, and it does seem that this is part of their focus on making a game this way, a bit more casual, just looking for a fun, relaxing game to play instead of being a blockchain crypto nerd or bro, if you will. So you can also see this focus in their white paper, as they have some proposed demographics, which include a gender part, which says 60% female and 40% male. So in fact, this would be a huge difference compared to almost everything else in the blockchain space, which would be great for them and for the community as a whole, getting crypto out there as a less niche, nerdy, or bro-y thing. The team behind My Neighbor Alice is a Swedish game development team who was previously known as Survive and was a bit of a pioneer in the VR space. They've since rebranded to Antler Interactive and are focusing more on the immersive player experience and putting all their time and development into My Neighbor Alice. The full game of My Neighbor Alice is set to release sometime this year, and it will be interesting to see how the reception goes. So for now, that's all about My Neighbor Alice. It's definitely in a unique space within GameFi, and we'll see how it goes once they release the full game. And let's move on to the next one. YGG. YGG is the token of the project of the same name, YGG, which stands for Yield Guild Games. Unlike the previous tokens we've talked about, YGG is not a token backing one particular game, but rather backing this guild, as the name suggests. Now, what is a gaming guild? It works the same as any guild, really. It gets all of the people who want to play the games together into one group, and then leverages that power of having them all together as a collective to ask for exclusive perks or NFTs or anything that GameFi games want to give them. Now, the way this works is the GameFi games will give them these exclusive perks because they are providing this immediate player base, not only of players, but of players who are showing initiative and real interest in playing the games. This will give the games associated with YGG this immediate player base and feedback on development, as well as this player boost into their game's ecosystem. So those who join YGG will be able to enjoy special perks such as some NFT drops, perhaps some cheaper NFTs, as well as the opportunity to make use of in-game NFT assets without actually owning that asset. Currently, this is called Scholars and Scholarships. So for example, YGG works with Axie Infinity, and as we know, the price of Axies and Axie Infinity is quite high, so a lot of newer or casual players don't actually want to spend so much money in buying those initial Axies, but would like to play the game and earn some rewards. So within YGG, players can become a scholar, and they can actually use Axies already bought by somebody else in order to play the game and earn in-game rewards, which will be split among the player that's playing the game using those assets, the holder of those assets, and even YGG as a whole. YGG is also developing a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, where YGG holders will have some voting rights as to what games YGG partners with, what kind of partnerships they get, what kind of NFTs they get from those partnerships, so on and so forth. And YGG holders may also be entitled to certain airdrops, perks, or whatnot that you would usually get for holding the token that allows you to vote in any sort of DAO. YGG is already quite well established in the GameFi space, as you can see by this post they put out. As a 2021 year recap, they have over 100,000 members in their Discord community, over 18,500 badge holders, which is actually a big deal because even though the YGG badge is free, you still have to pay the gas fee for minting the badge, which this year has been crazy, around like $50 to $100. So that's showing commitment to the idea of YGG. They've also said they have 21 plus game partners, which now has increased, as you can see from a more recent release. They've announced 11 new game partners since then. So clearly they have over 30 game partners, maybe 35 or so. 32 scholarship managers. I mentioned scholarships before. If you were a scholar, then you can use these in-game assets without owning them. So these scholarship managers are those ones who are arranging all of that. And then they have 10,000 plus Axie Infinity scholars. So since Axie has been so big this year, that's sort of been their main thing. But as we just said, they're partnered with many, many different games, and that looks like it's only going to continue growing. So YGG is a pretty interesting concept. They're not actually the only GameFi guild, but they are the biggest one so far. And like I said, they're not associated with any one game. They're partnering with games as they come along and sort of adding to the entire GameFi ecosystem. So if you like the idea of GameFi and want to get into it without backing any one particular game, then YGG might be an interesting thing for you to look into. And we'll see how they grow as the whole GameFi industry expands. So let's move on to the next one. AGLD stands for Adventure Gold, and it's the token that was released after the release of the Loot for Adventurers NFT collection. If you're not familiar with Loot, it's actually a NFT collection that's just a text list of items that sound like they would be in-game assets that weren't actually associated with any game upon release. This confused a lot of people, including me, but after I looked into it, I thought the whole concept was actually quite interesting, as they're trying to just turn over the whole process on its head, and instead of having the game out first and then have the game develop assets and then sell them as NFTs, they're actually just selling the in-game assets before they're ever developed, as a way to get the games to develop these assets. So yeah, the NFT collection really is just this list of words. But this is a really fun experiment within the space, playing with traditional norms about the process of the way things are developed. And they're really the first of their kind to make this kind of NFT collection. So why is there a token associated with this NFT collection? The idea is that it's going to be used as a governance token and have users vote on future in-game credits or future mints that are building on top of Loot and adopting AGLD. So they're taking this already interesting, unique concept of Loot and then even adding a token on top of it. Again, just really turning everything on its head and seeing if they can just start up a whole new wave in an unexpected direction. Now, if we're talking about the Loot NFT collection as well as Adventure Gold, it's important to note the creators of each of them. The Loot for Adventures NFT collection was created by Dom Hoffman, who is also one of the co-founders of Vine, which was really big back in the day when it was released, and has since gotten heavily into the blockchain space, working on several projects including Blipmap, Supdrive, and Unfine Art. Dom Hoffman also, as I said, created the Loot NFT collection, though as he mentions here on his Twitter, Loot is actually decentralized, so it's not his anymore, but he'll still contribute. Now, Adventure Gold actually was not made by Dom Hoffman. It was made by Will Papper, who is a developer who was very into the Loot idea and wanted to add a token for the community in order for the community to expand and possibly get more things built on top of Loot and try to get the entire Loot ecosystem more interactive and grow larger. So his idea is that everybody can come together to use Adventure Gold to really expand everything and maybe even get future projects built on top of Loot. So Loot and Adventure Gold are all rather abstract, kind of hard to wrap your head around ideas, and they're not as fully developed as some of these other tokens we've talked about. But there's a ton of interesting potential there, and while it could all turn to nothing and be forgotten, it could all also become something entirely unexpected. So it's also a very interesting one to look at. But that's enough of that for now. Let's move on to the next one. Now, the last purely GameFi related token that we've released in our latest batch is SLP, which is a token that's part of the Axie ecosystem. Now, you may think, wait, the Axie token is already on Phemex. And that's AXS, which is the governance token and sort of, you may say, the main token behind the Axie Infinity ecosystem. However, they have more than one token. Another one is SLP, which stands for Smooth Love Potion. And it's the token that you actually earn in-game while you're playing Axie, and then can be used later to breed Axies in the game. As you can see in the Axie Infinity white paper, depending on the number of breeds you're doing, it'll cost different amounts of SLP. And you can earn SLP by playing the game more. So essentially the price of SLP will directly have to do with how popular the game is for actual players playing Axie and breeding, because it is really the in-game token of playing the Axie Infinity game. Now, if you don't know about Axie Infinity, it's the GameFi game that really blew up during last summer before Facebook changing its name. Now, some other games also went up at that time, but Axie Infinity was the one that really exploded. This is mostly because it was one of the most fully developed games that was actually playable and implemented the play-to-earn model in a way that people could actually see exactly how to play and earn, which was very important, as some other games either didn't have the immersive aspect and they weren't fun to play, or it just wasn't obvious how to actually earn money in the game, and it seemed a bit like it was to chance. With Axie Infinity's breeding system, it kind of made it obvious how one would go about earning money by playing the game. So it revolutionized the GameFi space in that sense. Now, if you look at Axie Infinity compared to Sandbox, you might think that it's a bit less immersive, but it should be noted that it was much more fully developed as a playable game earlier on than Sandbox. And after it had that huge pump, it's possible they may decide to develop the game further past what it looks like now. And the team behind Axie Infinity has shown their propensity to develop their game quickly and in a playable way. So it'll be interesting as well to see where future developments of Axie Infinity goes. Since it's become so popular, there's no reason for them to stop developing it, and who knows what they might add in the future. All right, guys, that's it for today's introduction over Phemex's recently released GameFi tokens. I'll cover the other recently released tokens in a later video. Please remember that the ones covered today are also the subject of the upcoming trivia. I hope this video gives you plenty of details. And if you're really looking to get that cutting edge, you should go search additionally all of these on your own, because not all of the questions will be from the video, but some will. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you next time, or see you on the trivia.